Hello and welcome to our tnAchieves mentor webinar today. The topic is getting prepared for your students. I'm Graham Thomas, and joining me today is our Executive Director, Chrissy D'Alejandro. And we're gonna have a bit of a conversation today about some best practices, some tips, advice. We know that in your mentor training, we feel like we have really kind of covered the mechanics of how to be a mentor. And so today we're really going to kind of focus on actually working with students and just things that we have learned over the last 12 or 13 years. The mentor program is something that has been with us since the very beginning. It's something that we have thought is important since we launched tnAchieves in Knox County in 2008. And so today we're going to give you some lessons learned over the last 13 years, general advice, things we've learned from mentors. I'm going to kind of ask some questions to Chrissy. We're going to have a bit of a conversation, and then we want to make sure that we save a lot of time for your questions. So I've already seen some of you are using the chat box at the bottom. So everyone is muted for sound quality, but you can interact with us. So there is a chat box and a Q&A box at the bottom. So there you can ask your questions. We are certainly going to save time at the end to make sure that we get your questions answered. I have a few questions kind of lined up just to get us started, but really we want to make sure that you feel prepared to work with your students. I'll tell you one last thing before we jump in. Every single year we host a couple of these, and it seems to be our most popular webinar of the year. Our capacity on one of these is 500, and I think we reached it in about 4 hours this time. And it seems to be that way every year. So we're so glad that you're joining us. We hope that we'll get your questions answered and that you'll feel more prepared when you leave this. But to start out, we're going to welcome Chrissy. You can see her. She hasn't said anything yet. Chrissy, thanks for being here. Just to get us started, when we started tnAchieves 13 years ago, why was it important for you that there was a mentoring component to the tnAchieves program?
Oh, that's a question for me. I thought you were like opening us up. Sorry. So, well, I'm excited to be here. Thanks to everyone for joining us. We're very excited to talk to you as you embark upon your journey as a mentor. For those of you who are returning, we thank you so much for continuing down this path with us. For those of you who are new, welcome to the tnAchieves family. So yes, why was it so important to us? So to give you a bit of background about tnAchieves, it was really built on 3 pillars, specifically serving Knox County students originally. The idea was to send every student to a post-secondary institution from a Knox County high school who wish to attend. And although the program has always been universal in nature, we were working to serve a very specific targeted group of students. And I always sort of referred to it as the student who thought that college was not an option for them. These students were provided a privately funded last dollar scholarship. They were asked to give back 8 hours of community service to begin cultivating that culture of giving back that was incredibly important to our founders. And then finally, as Graham mentioned, the volunteer mentoring program was one pillar that was a non-negotiable from the very beginning. The data showed us that this student that fell into that never thought college was an option category tended to be the first in their family to go to college. First generation students, as you all are probably aware, face some very unique challenges. Many of that is simply navigating the college process. I can speak from my own personal experience that as the first one in my family to go to college, I had incredibly supportive parents. It doesn't mean that your parents aren't on board with college. I simply did not have the know-how because my parents had never walked that college journey before. And so it was incredibly important also to Mike Ragsdale, who was the Knox County mayor at the time, first in his family to go to college, Randy Boyd, our chairman, who was the first in his family to go to college. We had this shared experience and understood that if you only provided the funding, that we would not have the impact that we were hoping to have with these students. And so the volunteer mentoring program was introduced as someone who could be in the student's corner, someone to encourage, someone to nudge, and someone to serve as a resource. If no one in your family has gone to college before, questions like, what's a bursar? Or why is there a wonky like TH or on my schedule? Like, what does all this mean, right? And so the mentor came into play. As I always say, the funding was the carrot, but the mentor became the heart of the program. We always talk about the fact that this is not intentionally a deep dive into the students' lives, but what it is meant is to really own that transition. That's how I see it. Mentors are taking ownership of this incredibly important transition from high school to post-secondary. And if you had two parents who walked that journey, perhaps it's been a long time also since the parents walked that journey. And so we train our mentors to really walk alongside students to say, we can do this together.
Yeah, I think for the last 12 or 13 years now, we have always kind of sold the mentoring program as there are three big roles, right? Someone that are helping to keep students on track, someone that is available to them as a resource to ask questions, to reach out when they don't know what the next step is. And finally, that encouragement piece, which for the last decade plus now, I think I've always thought has been the most important, right? Someone that can just say like, hey, everyone who's gone to college before struggled at some point, and yes, it gets tricky, and yes, it gets hard. What do you think as students are continuing to navigate wrapping up high school, going to college in the middle of a pandemic? What do you think is the most important of these roles for these students?
I would definitely say even pre-COVID, in my mind, the most important role is that encouragement role to normalize college. I was the top of my class in my high school. For those of you who know me, it will not surprise you that I was like head nerd of Warren County High School. But when I landed in college, I failed my first math test. I did terrible on my first paper. My first semester of college was an unmitigated disaster. And I think for many of our students, they don't understand that that's a shared experience, right? I don't talk to many people who first generation, not first generation, students from low income backgrounds, students from not low income backgrounds that don't have that shared experience of not their best semester was that first semester. And so normalizing that for students, I think, is incredibly important. Talking to students about the fact that you also faced obstacles along the way. I mean, we talk to students every day for the past 13 years. This has been my life. And they do believe that all our mentors who have seen so much success in various fields just were overnight sensations, right? Like you never struggled. It was never hard. You were just sort of poof, an overnight success. And I think, again, normalizing the experience and also sharing with students that you experienced it too, or you know someone who experienced it, or you changed your major. You didn't have it all figured out and didn't know what you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were 18 years old. I think all of that is so incredibly important. I think specifically to COVID, we are facing a class of 21 that quite frankly feels very disengaged from the process. I feel like I've been shouting this from the rooftops for the past several months now, that this class feels more distant. Perhaps it's because we're not in the high school building, but perhaps it's just a general sense of students really want a normal college experience. They are telling us that time and again. And I believe the mentor will have to figure out how to communicate with students that this can still be a very positive experience, that they're going to have to dig in and give it a shot. And so again, I do believe that being that task manager, that nudging piece is so important so they meet deadlines. Obviously, answering questions, that resource, incredibly important as well. But monumentally, without a doubt, encouragement is needed for these students now more than ever.
Yeah, you just mentioned that student or mentors, I'm sorry, are going to have to figure out how to communicate with students. We know that our student population, specifically the students that we're trying to reach, those first generation college attendees, can be challenging to reach at times. One of the things that we hear from mentors every single year on the end of the year survey is that some of the students are not the most responsive, and that connecting with some of them can be difficult. What advice do you have for mentors in specifically connecting with them, reaching out to them, and getting a hold of them?
So my first piece of advice, and I often say this when I do in-person mentor trainings, is don't let the 17-year-old hurt your feelings, right? You are the adult in the relationship, and understand that the most important thing that the mentor can do is not give up on the student. You can text, you can call, you can email, and when you receive no response, know that it's a shared experience across the board. I'm sure teachers are experiencing that now with COVID. I'm sure that many of us who work in the space of education find this to be incredibly prevalent, especially in this 2020 like mindset among students. Don't give up on them. I think we've heard from some mentors that it was the 12th text, right, that made the student respond. I will say that personalized text messaging works. We see that in our coaching model that we have at Tennessee Achieves. If you can be personalized versus a group text, that it really does make a difference. Making sure that you also are asking the student to respond to your communication is incredibly important. Until they get that rhythm and that cadence with you, I would ask the student to respond. We also learned recently in a student panel that students want you to ask how they feel. How do you feel about going to college? How do you feel about online learning? How do you feel about whether or not you're getting your community service done? Like, I could play this game all day with them if that's going to get them to respond to us and let us know where they are in the space. And so, I would try to call. I think Connect, and we haven't talked about that yet, but I think Connect is going to be a really amazing tool for our mentors to use. Not only are you able to see your student information in real time and be able to use that personalized information in your text messaging, in your communication, but also it's another avenue to try to connect with your students. And so we're thrilled to be offering that as another option. It's not the only option, though. My fear is that mentors will work in Connect and not have success that they want in Connect and don't realize this is one resource among many at your disposal. But we're thrilled to offer it to mentors during COVID. But again, as personalized as you can be, I will tell you what we found at Tennessee Achieves is taking notes on your students. And so that when you go back to the student, you can reference those notes. I always use the example of find out if they have a pet, find out the pet's name, ask about the pet, right? It's not the best example, but one example of something that might be incredibly important to our students.
I always go back to that student in Memphis that became a mentor, talking about receiving those mass reminders and thinking it was like a calendar invite. And it's one of those things I always think really holds true with our students is they want to feel that personal one-on-one connection, and really makes a difference sometimes. I think those mass messages are so important for like reminders and go do your community service and make sure you're doing this and make sure you're doing that. But to really check in and build that relationship, sometimes it takes that extra time to go one-on-one. So you mentioned Connect. So why, behind the scenes, Tyler and I have been working on Connect now since for almost a year, since I guess last April. Why was this the time? Something I think our mentors have asked for years is something, a tool where they can track their students in a little more robust manner than we've ever been able to offer. So why was this year, and what benefits do you see using this new tool that we have?
Well, I can roll back to exactly 1 year from now. And you and I were in my hometown of McMinnville, Warren County, running the team meeting there not really understanding how large COVID was going to loom in our lives. And I remember, embarrassingly enough, you asking me if I thought this was going to affect our work, and me going, I don't think so. No. And then literally the next day, pulling out of all our team meetings across the state, putting our mentor and student and school administrator safety first. And so it became very clear to me that we had relied so heavily on in-person interaction, and we were not going to have that. But it was also incredibly important to you, to me, to Tyler, to Ben, the entire mentor brain think tank, if you will, that we think about how to continue fostering these relationships that we know are so important. And so we wanted to be proactive instead of reactive. I felt like 2020 was a year of reaction. And I don't like that. I like anticipating what comes next. I also like being disruptive. And so we started working very quickly to try to find an alternative for our mentors. And I think what we landed on was something custom built for Tennessee Achieves mentors, something that we felt really accentuated the great parts of what we were doing, but also built upon what we had been doing to really bring a value add to the mentoring program. I love that all the information is housed in one place for our mentors. I love that mentors are going to be able to see where their students are at any given time, their institution of choice. I love all of these new elements. I love that we're going to be able to see how often mentors and students are able to actually connect. I think that mentors, and every mentor that I am actually friends with, anyone that's trained with Tyler, comes back to tell me how much they love the tool. I will say, in full disclosure, I'm so hopeful that the students also see the value in it, and we're going to do the best we can to try to really encourage student participation.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it too. And for us on the back end, it really gives us a window into what the mentor-student relationship looks like, something that we've never had before. But for the user end on the mentor front, I really think this provides you a level of access to students and to our program that you've never had before. So we really hope that you enjoy that. So something else that's new this year, while we, like you mentioned, felt very reactive in 2020, a lot of new things here in 2021, and that's the Find Your Why campaign. Talk to us a little bit, where did that idea come from, and how will mentors use this to shape their experience this year?
Yeah, I think the idea just came from this notion of students feeling distant and disengaged from the post-secondary process as we work through Tennessee Promise applications alongside our amazing K-12 partners who are just so invested in making sure students do have access to post-secondary. What I realized during that process, and as we phased into FAFSA, and what I believe like our team started to really identify, was we needed to really tap into the value proposition of college in a very different way, right? I mean, since 2014, Tennessee has had this really great advantage in the fact that we can walk into large gymnasiums or cafeterias and say, for everyone in here, college can be tuition free. And I love doing that. That's still one of my favorite parts of this job. But I think COVID has really been eye-opening for many of us in the field, that we need to rethink about how we talk about college, how we sell college to this particular cohort of students. It's not the normal college experience, and we need to be transparent and upfront about what it is so they know exactly what the expectations are. But I think most importantly, that we need to help the students ignite whatever it is that is inside of them that motivates them to earn a college credential. Or maybe it's never been ignited in them, and we need to help them find that why. Like, why do you want this? And so what was so amazing is we sent out a text message to our students asking them the current 2020 college freshmen. We sent out like, why did you go to college? Like, what was it about? It was a strange year and semester, and you chose to go anyway. Why? And we had over 4,000 responses to that text message, which we compiled and we analyzed, and we had some really incredible answers. We asked parents of those students a very similar question and also had some really incredible answers. And what we found is that, for every student, it's a little different, but it did fall into some major themes. So we've built an entire campaign that launched February 1st and will run all the way through September 1st that are trying to help students, again, normalize college, identify with students who did come from our earlier classes, to see students like the grownups can tell them all day long, but to hear from your peers about their why, I think is incredibly moving and motivating. And so we're really trying to amplify that message that college is important, but using student voice. And I love that it's, students are like, I want a better career and a brighter future. Students are saying, I want to make myself proud. They're saying, I want to make my family proud. Students are even saying things like, I want to break my family cycle of discounting education. I mean, I did not think about that when I was 17. And so these students are savvy. And I love the fact that we are really, we've always been a student first organization and will always be a student first organization. But I love that this campaign is really informed and driven by students.
So we're going to take your questions now. So I see we have several already. If you have questions, please go ahead and type those into the Q&A. We're going to get to as many of them as we can here in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. But I've noticed there are a lot of questions about Connect. How do you access it is one. Check your email. We've sent you plenty of emails you have a unique link to get that registered. And then a lot of questions about, do we think students will use it? Do students know how to operate it? We have more than half of them have already set up their Connect profiles. We're inching up towards 60% of the students have already activated those. And we're continuing to push that to them. And it will be something that we probably ask you to help us with next week. So once you receive your list of students from us, for those of them that are not yet active, we will ask you to kind of nudge them there as well. And then, Chrissy, feel free to add in here the question about, do we think students will use it? Yes. Hopefully, right? So that's why we made this investment, is that we do think that students will use it. When you log in and look at it, I think you're going to see, for those of you that are on social media, it looks very similar to a social media profile. And when we shop these, we picked one that looked like that intentionally, so that it feels comfortable to them. It is something that we will be monitoring. We're putting their mandatory video that they have to watch, their mandatory webinar. Is housed in Connect, so they'll have to log into the platform to use that. And we do think they'll use it. We certainly hope that they'll use it. And Chris, anything you want to add?
We're going to incentivize them using it and remind them to use it and nudge them and encourage them and all the things to use it. We have invested quite a bit of time and resource into this platform. And so, yes, we do think they will use it. But, again, we're not going to let the 17-year-olds hurt our feelings, and we're going to be really proactive in the space of really encouraging them to take advantage of not only the resource that you provide, but via Connect.
A few more questions I've seen about Connect. Someone asking, can we walk them through it? How do we use it? Once you log in, there are a lot of tutorials. So Tyler on our team has filmed a lot of tutorials walking you through each of the different components. So log in there and take a look, and I think you'll find it pretty easy to use. We've got a couple of questions about students in the pandemic while, it's kind of a two-part question. So students that are graduating, having a hard time finding jobs, and then students that are wanting to go to college with all the uncertainty, they're maybe not seeing the value of college that they saw before the pandemics. Can you talk to that a little bit?
No, I think it's a major concern, honestly. I mean, I'm concerned about fall enrollment, and that's why the mentor, I believe, this year is more important than ever before. I worry about employment, students who whose parents lost their jobs and they're helping like supplement household income. I worry about student disengagement. I worry, and I share your concerns. Hence, Find Your Why, hence the mentoring program, hence Summer Bridge that we offer every summer. I mean, we're really trying to pour gasoline on student supports because I believe this year more than ever, students will need additional scaffolding in a way that encourages, that provides them with accurate information in a timely fashion. I think if a student calls and we don't pick up the phone, I worry about sort of what that means for their mindset. Not to be like a total alarmist, but there are all sorts of things swirling through our heads at Tennessee Achieves, and we're trying to be, again, just sort of disruptive in the space and trying to think creatively and quickly about how we can drive fall enrollment for these students.
So we got a couple questions here about building the relationships and connections with students. Thomas here has called himself a dinosaur, not my term, but is saying as a slightly older mentor, how would he measure success? He says he graduated from college in 1980. We have another mentor asking how you would build that just suggestions on building that relationship and finding that connection with students.
Yeah, I share your thoughts, Thomas. I too feel like the other day someone was like, we're going to do an icebreaker and you type into the chat the GIF on how you feel today. And I was like, what's a GIF? I don't know what, no idea what that is. So, I think that building the relationship will be incredibly important. I think when you communicate first with your student, providing that student with a real sense of who you are and your why for participating in the program, I think as much as they can know that you are a real person, oftentimes they think Tennessee Achieves, for example, that we're robots when we text them. And so not being super formal with them, not feeling like you have to be a person with all the answers, being authentic and being really honest and upfront with them and sharing as much information about yourself as you feel comfortable sharing, I think we'll start to build that relationship. And they're also, I believe, once that relationship is established, much more likely to answer you when you call or when you schedule video chats with them in Connect, whatever the case may be. And so I think utilizing any sort of virtual face-to-face Zoom, or again, utilizing the capability within Connect will also be incredibly important so they can see you. We will get back to in-person meetings. Make no mistake about it. Connect is not displacing our in-person meetings, but it is a huge value add. And we're going to spend the next year really learning about how this is effective and maybe not effective for our mentors. And so I think, again, digging in and being as authentic as you possibly can be on the front end.
Got a couple questions about meetings with students. One from Alex. What do you think the primary goal should be for the first meeting with students? We know they'll be a little less structured than they have been in the fact that mentors will be scheduling these on their own. There won't be a staff member present. What do you think should be the big takeaway?
The big takeaway from the first meeting is getting to know your student. I mean, we are happy to, and you're going to have your handbook soon, right? Getting to know your student, I think, will be the most important piece. Garnering as much information as you can. I got my pen here and I'm pretending to write down what you can that you're learning from your student. If you're not sure about what questions to ask, we're happy to send out a template for that first meeting for you. But, where do you hope to go to college? What do you hope to do? Do you have a major in mind? Those kinds of questions. I think asking them about how their high school experience has been during COVID. How do you feel about high school during COVID, right? That how do you feel question, I think, will be incredibly important for those students. And then again, I would dig into that why in that first meeting. Try to dig out of them what they're motivated by and use that in your ongoing communication with students. Return to that every time that you are meeting with students. Hey, I know you said that you're really interested in going to college because you're really hoping to find this specific or have this specific career in nursing. And so return to that and help that student continue to remember why they signed up for this in the first place.
So we've got a few questions about the mentor pairing process. Give you guys a real quick rundown. Something that our team is working on right now. That is happening this week with the goal that you will receive your student list from us this Friday. And a lot of questions about how you're paired with students. It is simply based on the county and high school that you asked for. We do our best to pair male to male, female to female. Our mentor split this year, though, is about 70% of you. Our mentors are female. Only about 30% are male, and our student population is 50-50. So our female mentors do oftentimes work with male students. So Chrissy, what do you think are maybe some of the challenges in that? Someone asked, do the students ask for a volunteer mentor? All the students get a mentor. So I do think our program is unique in that we do create a mentoring relationship, unlike Big Brothers Big Sisters, where I've volunteered for several years. A great program, but a very different program. What do you think some of the unique challenges are in the fact that we give students a mentor, whether they ask for it or not, for lack of a better phrase?
Well, instead of talking about the challenges first, I want to say that there's intention behind it, right? What we have found specifically that in our program, at the scale at which we work, remember, think about this. 89.4% of high school seniors move through tnAchieves every year. 89.4%, which is truly incredible. We serve 98.1% of Tennessee Promise students. What we have found is that oftentimes this is a student's backup plan. I'm off to the University of Tennessee. I'm off to Vanderbilt. I'm off to fill in the blank institution. And for those students, we think the mentor is important because those students need support too. I think oftentimes there is some misinformation about Tennessee Promise where it is a funnel too, right? Like we are funneling them all into community and technical college. And while we love our community and technical college partners and think they do an incredible job with students, this is about getting students to a post-secondary credential and students finding the right fit. But the mentor can play that role regardless of Tennessee Promise intentions, right? And so I love the fact that oftentimes what we find is that the student who needs the mentor the most will never be the student who raises their hand for the mentor, right? Time and again, we've seen this play out. And while mentors are assigned, 5 to 7 students, oftentimes you're really working with about 2 students. You're there to be a resource. You're there to be an encourager and that task manager for our students. But you often are just really digging in with 1 to 2 students who need that additional layer of support. And so there are unique challenges in the fact that students didn't sign a contract to be with us. Students didn't commit to a mentoring relationship. But I believe truly that we can reach these students, that the localness of our volunteer mentoring program is so important because you have shared experiences. You go to shared places, right, with those students. And so make sure to leverage that as you're getting to know your students.
We've already gone over time. So we've got a couple more questions, and I'm going to let Chrissy end us with her final advice, tips, and thoughts. A couple of things on timing that have continued to come up. You're going to receive your students at the end of the week. We're going to follow up with an email next Monday with things that you should learn from your first meeting. So a little kind of programmatic piece here. You're going to get your list of students from us on Friday. Your students will, and you and your connections will load into Connect over the weekend. That there is a little bit of a lag there to load 70,000 people and their connections into the platform. And then Monday, you can start reaching out to them there in Connect. So keep that in mind. Look for your list of students on Friday and hopefully start working with them on Monday. So Chrissy, several people have asked, do you recommend mentors and students potentially setting up in-person meetings, maybe outdoors, socially distanced? What do you think? What are your thoughts about that?
I feel like this is a loaded question. This is really hard for me because I want to say yes, try to get with your students. But I'm going to say for now, trust us and use the virtual option that we have provided via Connect. Help us get this platform off the ground and like give it to us. We want to hear like what's working well, what's not working well. Your feedback will be really important to how we continue to build out. So this is the first year for us too with Connect. And in full disclosure, like we've all been in it 1,000 times over, but we really want it to work for you. That's the most important piece of this for you and for our students. And so, thinking about how to use those virtual tools, I think for now will be incredibly important. I am hoping that by summer, and into the fall, typically we have that really great September meeting with students once they land in post-secondary. And while we've committed to a fully virtual year, perhaps you can start scheduling some of those one-on-one meetings with the students at their individual colleges. And so I think we will have options down the road. I would say hang with us virtually for now to ensure that you're safe, to ensure your safety and the student's safety.
Seen a few questions about where do you go when you have questions. Our team is always here available to you. John Cagle put something in the message that said you can reach out to the tnAchieves representatives anytime and they'll answer your questions. And we hope that that is the case. We work very hard to make sure that we answer your questions. Tyler, Ben, and I work on the mentor program pretty much full time. Chrissy, I know, is always available to take your phone calls. Our entire team is available to help you. So on our website, you can find our entire staff listing in the mentor handbook. You can find our entire staff listing. Please reach out to us. We want to make sure that you're never in the dark. So Chrissy, close us out. Final tips, advice, best practices, anything we haven't covered today?
Well, first of all, hey, John Cagle, one of my faves from all the way back. But it's been so fun to be here with you today. If you continue to have questions, please reach out and let us know. Do not feel like you should have all the answers. I think that's the most important mindset to go into this relationship with. If they ask you a hard question about FAFSA, you should not know the answer to that unless you're Eric Farmer, who I know is on here and will know all the answers, and Rita as well. But if you are, my husband has mentored and he's a chef. He knows nothing about financial aid for students, but he believes in the college going process. He believes that students can reach their full potential. And really that mindset is what it's really all about. Be authentic. Again, make sure that you remember that these students are struggling right now for the most part, right? It's been a weird year. And so having empathy, being compassionate, digging in with them, and then again, helping them find that fire in their belly, I think this year will be the most important thing that you can do. So we appreciate your time. We know you could be doing a million other things for so many organizations. So the fact that you continue to invest in our students, we are sincerely grateful. So thank you so much, Graham. This has been so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all again for joining us. I know that there were a lot of questions. We tried to get to as many as we could and went a little over time, but we appreciate you hanging with us and being with us this year. If we didn't get your question answered, we'll run through these questions and try to get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.